All right, civil rights, on the other hand, these are your the rights of equality, the right to equality, the right to freedom, the right to equality. And we talk about freedom and equality as being opposite ends of the poles of our ideological spectrum, and that those two things conflict with one another. And that's true. And so the struggle for equal rights and using government to ensure equity may conflict or perceive to be conflicting with our individual rights, our individual freedoms, collective rights versus individual rights. And when there's a conflict between individual rights and collective rights, it's often the courts that will have to balance those two entities out and come to some decision. And this where it goes back to your point that it's not there are no absolutes in the Constitution. I don't have an absolute right to freedom of the press. I don't have an absolute right to freedom of speech. I don't have an absolute right to keep and bear arms. I don't have an absolute right to be secure in my person, or things, my articles. I don't have that absolute right. And basically what the court has done is it said, okay, here's our test. We'll call it the bad tendency test. And under this umbrella of bad tendency, what's under the umbrella of bad tendency will not be protected. Or maybe umbrella is maybe the wrong article to use. What is under this umbrella of what we call a bad tendency? Slander, libel, conspiracy, using your words in a manner that causes harm. We call it clear and present danger. Okay? Slander, libel, conspiracy, clear and present danger. If your intent is bad, you're not going to be protected by the Constitution. That's the test. The courts have come back and said, you may or may not be protected by the Constitution, but we're going to take a look at it. If your intent is bad, the Constitution should not be a shield that allows me to enact or inflict harm upon you without society coming back and saying no.
Okay, then you have civil rights. Well, basically, if you could keep it to yourself, limited to yourself, you have across the board rights. But once you involve another person,
right,
in any shape, form, or fashion,
right,
it's questionable.
Right. Well, right. That's kind of the castle doctrine, if you will. What you do in your own house is up to you, and whose business is it anyway? And that doesn't extend to just you. When you have kids in the house, it's a little different. When you have a spouse in the house, it's a little bit different. But if it's just you and if a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's kind of that mentality. You're free to say whatever you want to when you're by yourself. You're free to be as big a bigot or be buck naked if you want to be when you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. It's when other individuals are that's when you have to ultimately make those decisions as to whose rights win out. And again, individual rights versus the rights of society. One of the issues that's a little bit difficult to get your hands around is the idea of what is equality. And this idea of the civil rights and the idea of equity and the constitutional foundation for it really is found in, conceptually individuals that argue through judicial activists that the idea of equality is inherent in the Constitution in general. It is the spirit of the Constitution. But if you want to look for an enumerated section of the Constitution that actually mentions equality, that's where you get to the 14th Amendment. Within the 14th Amendment, remember the 14th Amendment comes right after the Civil War. The 14th Amendment really is a response to what to do with, as you pointed out, these newly freed slaves. Not just the idea of a job or a house or work, but here you have a whole group of individuals who, by the Dred Scott decision, were determined to be non-citizens.
They don't have the right to vote. They don't have the right to own property. They do not have any rights.
They don't have rights as citizens. And so the question whether the 14th Amendment is, all right, if the Dred Scott decision, which was a court decision, said the Constitution does not provide citizen rights to all blacks, then the question is, how do we rectify that? And if you read the 14th Amendment under that, in that framework, that we're thinking about these newly freed slaves and how do we address the issue of citizenship, then then you can see where the focus of the 14th Amendment was. First, the focus was to say that a citizen of the United States was anybody born in the United States.
That means that's where the grandfather clause came.
Well, yes, that's where the grandfather clause came in negatively, right? Yes, but the anybody born in the United States is a citizen of the United States. That we call jus soli. It's jus soli, right of soil. Jus sanguinis is the right of blood. That if your parent is a citizen of the United States, you too are a citizen, no matter where you're born. And we actually, in the United States, we follow both of those. We do follow this idea that if you're born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. And again, you go back into context why the 14th Amendment was ratified. You can see where individuals who are maybe using the 14th Amendment today, coming in this country illegally, but maybe pregnant, giving birth to a child who is now a U.S. citizen, making that a child an anchor child, where you might be able to say, okay, well, you can't deport me. I know I'm in the country illegally. I know I came here illegally. But now I have a U.S. citizen and child. You can't deport the U.S. child. You can't deport that citizen. So the mother would have to stay. Well, that wasn't what the 14th Amendment was seeking to do. It was seeking to rectify the Dred Scott decision. And then, under the same context, the 14th Amendment's equal protection of the laws. It has a passage that says the equal protection of the laws was geared first and foremost to those newly created citizens, those individuals who were not citizens, who are now citizens, to ensure that the state didn't use the grandfather clause, to ensure that the state didn't have two sets of laws for white folks and black folks, that the laws had to equally protect individuals. Well, that concept has been, again, like selective incorporation, has been pushed down in terms of concept beyond just this issue of newly freed slaves and blacks whose rights have been stripped because of the Dred Scott decision, and extended to all citizens as a constitutional right, this idea of equal protection laws. And that's, whether you believe that to be good or bad, let me talk about some groups when we start to talk about the idea of equal protection laws, whether these groups are one-to-one, identifiable and on par with individuals who were at one time slaves. And this would not only include equal protection based on color and race, this also may include equal protection based upon marital status, right? May include sexual preference or orientation, may include weight, may include age, education, income. There's a number of different identifiable groups who argue that the Fourth Amendment ensures that the laws will equally protect them. Now, the problem with that is equality is a concept a lot like general welfare. What is equal? Equal financial standing? Equal social standing? What are we talking about in terms of equality here when we talk about an equal protection law? That if the laws are enacted, I'm not hurt or helped any more than the next guy? Well, that's extremely difficult to do in a system that is based on capitalism and competition, where you have winners and losers, where you expect that individuals who take risks, if they're successful, will be rewarded, and individuals who take risks and aren't successful will be punished or will have a negative impact. So how do you pass laws that ensure an equal protection? And that has become a debate and discussion that again, fills the courts. What is equality? Is equality the idea that there will be an equal outcome or an equal opportunity?
There's equal opportunity.